Trade talk at the wide receiver position, and we'll make sure to tell you, as always, check out Dave's trade chart on CBSSports.com. So the buy low wide receiver is Jeudy. Came back after the extended absence with the ankle injury. Did not play well against Washington. Better days ahead?
That's what I'm thinking. And I know you're tired of me talking about Jeudy, and you're tired of me talking about Jeudy, but I'm making one more stand for Jeudy because I think he's going to end up being excellent, even in this Denver offense, even with Teddy Bridgewater throwing him the football. I thought he played a lot better in the second half. He really didn't play a lot in the first half, didn't get a lot of work in the first half, did step it up a little bit more in the second half, and I expect that to carry over, and I think he'll end up being the number one receiver for Denver. And there are people in every single fantasy league that drafted Jeudy and then had to wait for Jeudy to come back. And then when he finally does come back, he doesn't give them the type of game that they wanted. They might be sick and tired of staring at Jeudy on their roster. You shouldn't have to give up that much to get this talented receiver on your fantasy team.
This was the most frustrating game of the week for me because I was really hoping he comes back. We get a little bit of clarity about their targets. 4 targets each for Sutton, Fant, Jeudy, and Javonte Williams. 3 targets each for Patrick, Albert O, and Melvin Gordon. No clarity at all. I'm probably going to leave Jeudy on my bench again this week until I see him emerge as a starting wide receiver.
Makes sense. Obviously, Dallas is a little bit tougher opponent than the Washington football team, but maybe some more throwing coming from Teddy Bridgewater. But, the question going into the season was, can Teddy Bridgewater support 3 legitimate options? And after 1 week of seeing them fully, the answer right now is no. So I hope better days are ahead for Jeudy. I have plenty of Jeudy shares myself. The sell-high candidate at wide receiver is Robert Woods. You're not going to expect him to score twice every week, especially one on the ground?
No more rushing touchdowns for Robert Woods. And this is the similar refrain to what we said after he had that huge target game a few weeks back. He was complaining a little bit. He got a lot of work, and then we said, okay, try and sell high on him. Not saying that Robert Woods needs to be off of fantasy teams, period, end of story. He's still useful as a low-end number 2, high-end number 3 type of fantasy wide receiver. But I do think that Robert Woods, anytime he has a big game, you've got to try and move him for whatever you can get. And I think this is an opportunity where if you can get Jeudy and maybe a little piece on top of it for Robert Woods, make the move.
All right, so we'll see if Woods continues to perform at this level. I do like the 9 targets, though. At least they're trying to keep him involved. But obviously it's the Cooper Kupp show, and now we're seeing a little bit more of Van Jefferson also. So maybe the Rams alleviate another headache by trading Deshaun Jackson by the end of the day, and we'll see if that helps Woods and Van Jefferson moving forward. The drop list at running backs, unless you have an IR spot, you got to move on from Derrick Henry. Hard to hold the guy out 6 to 10 weeks. Hard to hold a guy on your roster who's out 6 to 10 weeks, and again, it could be longer than that. We just don't know what the Titans will do with Derrick Henry. Jamal Williams going into his bye week, coming off a game where he didn't play, easy to move on from him. And Damian Williams going into a game against the Steelers, not 100%, and then they have their bye week, easy guy to move on from as well. Let's show you the trade options at the running back position. Again, check out Dave's trade chart on CBSSports.com. Zach Moss is the buy low candidate at running back, and so Dave, he's coming off another game where 10 PPR points. He's been basically 10 or 11 PPR points when he hasn't found the end zone. He's clearly the better of the 2 running backs in Buffalo from a fantasy perspective. How low are you looking to buy, and what are your expectations for him rest of season?
Well, as the weather gets colder, maybe this Bills offense doesn't put the ball in the air as much. Moss has retained this role of being their red zone running back, their fourth quarter running back most weeks. He's been that guy, and he also works more in passing downs than Devin Singletary. So I think he's eventually going to turn all this opportunity that he's got into really reliable fantasy production. If I need a running back desperately enough, I'm going after Zach Moss, and I don't think I have to give up a whole heck of a lot to get him. For example, in the non-PPR league, I wonder if I can get him for T. Higgins. I wonder if I could get him for Mike Gesicki. I think that he's somebody that fantasy managers can quickly go and get.
Yeah, I just don't know what you're going to do with him. He's got 43 rushing yards in his last 2 games combined. He doesn't have He has 8 carries in each of those games. I just don't know for sure what his role is and how it's going to expand.
He also had 6 catches last week, too.
That helps,
That's impressive. And, you know, we know that he's their preferred goal line option. We know he's their preferred fourth quarter guy. I think the surprise was that they weren't beating the Dolphins by more points last week. He could have a 2-touchdown game against the Jaguars this week.
Sure.
So if you are going to get him now, because this matchup is probably something that he should take advantage of. All right, so the sell high candidate at the running back position is Damian Harris. So, Heath, I'll come to you on this one. Harris has been very good for the Patriots the last month. Certainly on the ground. We know what the identity of this team is. Are you looking to give up Damian Harris at this point?
I'm really not. I'm just wondering if maybe we've undersold the Patriots a little bit as a contender to be an above 500 team and a playoff contender down the stretch, because if they're winning more than they're losing, then Damian Harris is going to be a high-end number 2 running back. He's awesome when they're in the game or when the game script is in his favor. And so there's not enough running backs out there for me to be selling someone like Damian Harris right now.
I totally get that. I'm saying that if you can sell high on Damian Harris, meaning you get a big return on him from a desperate fantasy manager, go ahead and do it. 6 of the next 7 opponents for the Patriots rank top 10 in fewest fantasy points allowed to running backs. There are some tough games coming up for Damian Harris.
Let me ask you just to tie in real quick, the two guys that we talked about sell high at the running back position, Elijah Mitchell and Damian Harris. They're basically the same type of guy. They're not going to be involved in the passing game. They're on run-heavy offenses. One guy is getting competition. One guy is probably not. Who would you rather have rest of season, Harris or Mitchell?
Mitchell.
I think I would take Harris.
Yeah, I would take Harris also, just looking at the situation, because, again, I think Elijah Mitchell could be losing work if, in fact, we get Jeff Wilson back, and who knows what happens with JaMychal Hasty and Trey Sermon.